That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, my dudes. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is back in Green Bay, and it's time to panic. It's time to panic on a team that has so many talented players that are going pretty high in fantasy drafts, but they're destined to fail this upcoming season. Of course, we're going to talk about all of this, and please hear me out. I understand that I'm going to be saying some things that you don't want to hear, but please at least wait until the end. And something I talk about all the time in these videos is how important your opinion actually is. Because, I mean, yes, I'm the guy sitting here in front of the camera, but at the end of the day, I mean, I have pretty much a walnut for a brain. I am an idiot. So please let me know your opinion, because when you leave that in the comment section, it does a few different things. I see it, and a lot of times I go, okay, well, that was a pretty good point. I'll pin it to the very top of the comment section with one of those little favorites. I'm sure y'all have seen that in almost every single video. And when it goes up there, it gives other people a chance to go through and hear a counter argument to what I'm saying, because I don't want just one side coming in over and over and over again on a certain player, because there's a lot of things that I may overlook. So please continue to share your comments down in the comment section below, especially when you think I'm wrong. But don't just say, Mason, you're stupid. Mason, you're an idiot. Tell me why I am stupid. And your opinion really does matter. And yeah, before we get into it, guys, please drop a like on this video as well. Subscribe to the channel. We just passed 26,000 subscribers. I'm sure we'll be at 27,000 very soon. And that should be it. Let's dive into this breakdown, and let's bring up Jeudy, because oh my gosh, guys, this is going to be ugly in Denver. If we are looking at these wide receivers, I mean, they are being drafted very high in fantasy drafts right now. Where you're looking at Jeudy, he is currently going as the wide receiver 33. So he is someone that you have to take in the 6th, 7th round of your fantasy league. And the problem is, I was a little reluctant to come out here and call this a horrendous draft pick before Aaron Rodgers went back to Green Bay. Because I think in the 6th, 7th round, that's a fair price if you think that there's a solid chance that Rodgers was going to Denver, which of course was rumored the entire time. And all of a sudden, if you have Rodgers going to Denver, a wide receiver like Jeudy, who was a fantastic prospect coming out of Alabama, who we know is an elite route runner at the NFL level, I mean, that's a player that all of a sudden would skyrocket up to being a 4th round pick in fantasy. I would probably make the argument that he would be closer to CeeDee Lamb than where he was already being drafted. But that doesn't happen now. And we have to face the reality of what Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater are going to look like. And this is going to be very ugly, guys. And I understand a lot of people want to come out and they want to tell me, well, Mason, look at what Teddy Bridgewater did in Carolina. He took DJ Moore. He gave DJ Moore a wide receiver 3 season. DJ Moore is a stud. DJ Moore is a way better wide receiver than Jeudy. And let's also focus in on who he was competing for targets with. He was competing for targets with Robbie Anderson and Curtis Samuel. Pretty much all of those wide receivers were high-end wide receiver 3s in fantasy, with Teddy Bridgewater really only force-feeding those 3 guys. No players really got touches at all in that offense outside of those 3 receivers and Mike Davis. So it's not like Teddy Bridgewater was some great quarterback for fantasy purposes by any means. He took great wide receivers and made them wide receiver 3s in fantasy. And if there was a tight end in the mix, I guarantee you the target share would have been less for those receivers, and they would have actually been more disappointing in fantasy. Now, I will say with Bridgewater, another thing that we need to look at is what the Carolina Panthers thought of Teddy Bridgewater, what the Denver Broncos invested into Teddy Bridgewater. Because we see that the Carolina Panthers go out of their way. They dump Teddy Bridgewater for literally nothing. I believe they get like a 6th round pick, which is literally nothing in the NFL, my dudes. I mean, it's just, hey, take this player off our roster. And if it was them just getting a 6th round pick and Denver was paying for the contract, I think that would be okay. But what's funny is Carolina's paying for that Teddy Bridgewater contract. Carolina's paying $20 million to Teddy Bridgewater, and they're getting rid of him for a 6th round draft pick. That kind of shows us what this coaching staff, what this general manager thought of the talent of Teddy Bridgewater and how low we should also view him. Because this is the same coaching staff, this is the same general manager who went out there, they paid a 2nd to get to Sam Darnold. So think about this in terms of what moves the Carolina Panthers actually made. They essentially traded a 2nd round pick and Teddy Bridgewater to get Sam Darnold. At the same time, they are paying the contracts for both quarterbacks, which of course is going to be very notable in terms of looking at the team investment into those guys. And all of this is to say that don't try to go to the comment section and tell me how good of a quarterback Teddy Bridgewater is, because NFL teams and really everybody could have had Bridgewater for nothing, and they didn't want him for nothing, so he got sold for less than nothing. And don't try to tell me that he all of a sudden is going to make an impact on this team. I think that Drew Lock and Bridgewater, honestly, I don't even know who's going to be the starter this upcoming season. I think they honestly probably both get in some action. And Drew Lock, obviously, we know how bad he is. Y'all do not need me to go through that. And in the case of Jerry Jeudy, now this is a wide receiver that was a great prospect coming out. We've already discussed this, but I think that he is kind of living off of his talent, and nobody's really paying attention to the current situation that he is in. Because you go through and you look at him last year in 2020, a full season with Drew Lock pretty much. This is a wide receiver that was the wide receiver 59 in points per game. So he was a low-end wide receiver 5 in fantasy. And we go through and also understand that in this offense, I mean, he had the potential to be an impact player. He had the potential to be Terry McLaurin his rookie season with very bad quarterback play and nobody else in the offense. He goes out there, gets every target, and is highly productive. Well, that didn't happen. Instead, Courtland Sutton goes down for the entire year. Jerry Jeudy gets nothing going on, and that's pretty much because of the quarterback play with how bad it is in Denver. And we still thought that Jerry Jeudy was going to be able to progress slightly. I had Jerry Jeudy currently as our wide receiver 35 before Aaron Rodgers committed to stay in Green Bay this upcoming season. Now, of course, we had to move Jerry Jeudy down. So we currently have Jerry Jeudy at 37 now. We moved him 2 wide receiver slots lower, and we also dropped him an entire tier. So right now, over there on Patreon, by the time this video comes out, you can also see where we update Jerry Jeudy in the overall rankings. I want to spend a little bit more time on that before we get those published, though. But we fixed them in the positional because I just can't see Jeudy coming out in this situation and living up to where he's being drafted as the wide receiver 33. And I know it doesn't sound like that big of a difference when I'm saying I have him at wide receiver 37 versus wide receiver 33. But it's a massive difference if you look at the overall rankings. I mean, we have him ranked an entire round after where he's actually going, where I'd rather be getting tight ends in that range. I'd rather be getting other wide receivers. I'd rather be coming away with a running back. Really, anybody but Jerry Jeudy now that he's locked into this situation, because Courtland Sutton is also coming back to this offense. I mean, we pull this up right now. Courtland Sutton is a wide receiver going ahead of Jerry Jeudy in fantasy drafts. Now, I don't necessarily understand why he's going so far ahead of Jeudy. I would say that Courtland Sutton is even a bigger fade in fantasy, because we pull this up, and I know a lot of people have memories of Courtland Sutton dominating in Denver for whatever reason. I mean, people just kind of assume that you've seen Courtland Sutton be a wide receiver 2 in fantasy before. But no, his best season ever was his second year in 2019, where he had no target competition at all on this team. He was fighting for targets with Tim Patrick, and that is it. And in that season, he was the wide receiver 28 in points per game. He was a wide receiver 3 in fantasy. Now, since then, they add Jerry Jeudy, they add KJ Hamler, both wide receivers that can see a significant amount of targets this upcoming season. And at the same time, Noah Fant's now going into year 3. So while you actually see Courtland Sutton right now going as the wide receiver 31 in high stakes leagues, I can't get behind it. We actually moved Courtland Sutton down from our wide receiver 34 to our wide receiver 35. And a big thing is we actually dropped him down a tier. So that's going to be the main difference here when we publish those overall rankings over there on Patreon. You're going to find that Courtland Sutton's going down a tier, probably not going to ever be in consideration for you to actually come away and draft him. Because right now, people are assuming that he's going to get better than he's had his entire career, the best season yet. And at the same time, I mean, now there's third-year Noah Fant, there's second-year Jerry Jeudy, there's second-year KJ Hamler, there's Javonte Williams, there's Melvin Gordon, all those players in the offense that weren't there whenever he was a wide receiver 3. So how is he going to build on that when so many different guys are siphoning away touches? So now, the one player that I can get behind drafting in this offense is going to be Noah Fant. Okay, so here with Noah Fant, the reason I can get behind drafting him is I actually think that this team is going to be a lot closer to a wide receiver 1A, wide receiver 1B, and a wide receiver 1C, with Noah Fant being that last wide receiver. I think that people are going to be surprised with how close you actually have Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, and Noah Fant together in fantasy points, in targets per game. And here with Noah Fant, we know that's going to be so much more valuable when you can get that at the tight end position. And what's crazy is it seems like Noah Fant's been in the NFL for quite a while now, but he's only going into year 3. I mean, this is a player that he came out and he was productive right away in his rookie season, where he actually averages 35 receiving yards a game in 2019. That is one of the best marks that we have had in the past 2 decades at the tight end position. Very rarely do you ever see a tight end be able to average 35 receiving yards their rookie year. That is fantastic. And in 2020, he comes out, he builds on it. He actually finishes as a tight end 1, as the tight end 11 in points per game. He does this with Jeudy. He does this with KJ Hamler. He does this with a very poor quarterback situation. And so now when you actually have Noah Fant being drafted in a range where you can reasonably expect him to be a low tight end 1 in drafts, I think that's completely fine, because if he takes another step up with his talent, I think that you could see Noah Fant slide up into being a top 5 tight end in fantasy. We know that he has an elite athletic profile. I mean, this is someone that is literally 99th percentile across the board with his athletic measurables. And at the same time, he's only 23 years old. He has the size of an elite tight end at 6'4", 249 pounds. Profiles to be a move tight end. And that's why I'm saying that I think you actually have Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, and Noah Fant. All 3 of these guys are uber talented. What I want the cheapest of the options at the position where points are hardest to come by, if we're going to expect all the production to be pretty similar. Now, one thing that I kind of have a hard time looking at in this offense is going to be Javonte Williams. Because with Javonte Williams, we can look at this so many different ways. Okay, because I am on record saying that I think there's a real chance that Melvin Gordon gets traded to LA to compete with Darrell Henderson for the starting running back job there. I mean, you've seen LA go out there, trade for former running backs before, trade for really any veterans with future draft picks if they think they have a competitive team, which of course they do. I mean, they just spent 2 future firsts alongside Jared Goff to go get Matthew Stafford. LA's trying to win now. And if you look at the Denver Broncos, based on the fact that they really don't address the quarterback position at all, I think that this is a team that's most likely trying to get their quarterback in 2022, not necessarily playing to win, be a win now roster. They trade up to get Javonte Williams at the very top of the 2nd round. And at the same time, Melvin Gordon has a pretty damn big contract this upcoming season. So I think it's reasonable to expect that there's a real shot at Melvin Gordon getting traded to LA, which would skyrocket Javonte Williams in fantasy drafts, obviously. But at the same time, I mean, we've had some bad news this week in that he has no shot at getting Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback. So, of course, you have to lower your overall expectations on the entire Denver Broncos offense. And this is why with Javonte Williams, it's kind of difficult for me to try to pin down a current ranking of him. We actually have him as our running back 22, and I think we're going to keep him there. I mean, we currently have him directly behind both Josh Jacobs, Travis Etienne. We have him directly ahead of Kareem Hunt, Darrell Henderson, and Myles Gaskin. I can't move him down. Maybe we decide to move him down just a tier as our running back 22, but currently we have the tier break as tier 7 is that Jacobs, Etienne, Javonte Williams tier, and tier 8 is Kareem Hunt, Darrell Henderson, Myles Gaskin. Possibly we decide to move him down to tier 8, but I really think we kind of hold out to see if there's any shot that Melvin Gordon is indeed getting traded to LA, because that does make so much sense. And here, if Melvin Gordon was traded, I mean, you would automatically have Javonte Williams as a 3-down workhorse running back, because we go through and you look at Javonte Williams. This is a running back only 21 years old coming into his rookie year, which we know that is fantastic from a historical hit rate perspective. He was 5'10", 212 pounds. So he has a BMI of 30.4. That crashes our minimum threshold. I mean, that's perfectly fine for what you're actually trying to identify a 3-down running back with. And then at the same time, yes, you don't love to see the speed of 4.57 pro day 40-yard dash, which is not great. But beyond that, what you really like with Javonte Williams is the fact that he has the team investment, was drafted with the 3rd pick in the 2nd round. He is a great pass-catching running back. We always hear how good Michael Carter was at catching passes at UNC. But Javonte Williams was just as impressive, if not more impressive, to be completely honest. This is a player that went out there and he had 9.2% of his college targets in that offense. That is a massive number considering the fact that he had a very good pass catching running back in that same backfield. So Javonte Williams, going to be a great pass catching running back. He has the team investment to be a starting running back for his franchise, and he has the size to play on all 3 downs. So this has to get you excited, not to even mention that this is a player that had great efficiency marks in college at the same time. I mean, you go through and you actually pull up where he was going in terms of his yards per carry and how his trajectory was heading into his age 22 season before he decided to declare for the NFL draft. I mean, it's kind of crazy that in 2019, he actually averages 13 carries a game. He averages 1.5 targets a game and 85 total yards, half a touchdown. So a very mediocre season, not that great, but keep in mind in 2019, this is a player that is 19 years old, extremely young. And in 2020, his age 20 season, he comes out and he completely crushes. He really doesn't get that many more touches in his offense. He bumps up to 14 carries a game. He gets 2.5 targets, which is massive. But all of a sudden, this is a player that averages 131 total yards a game. He averages 2 total touchdowns a game, which obviously is just massive for Javonte Williams. So you love to see it. Please let me know what y'all are doing with Javonte, because I think you clearly moved down Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, Noah Fant, but Javonte Williams, I actually think that we kind of have to hold out. We have to see if there's any shot that Melvin Gordon gets moved over to LA, because if that would happen, I mean, all of a sudden, Javonte Williams, at the very minimum, is a 3rd round pick in fantasy. But thank you, my dudes. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. Of course, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, letting me know your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel. We'll be at 27,000 subscribers very soon. And yeah, that's all I got for y'all, my dudes, and have a great day. We've gotten a ton of new members joining the flock. Thank you, Grind for Gold, Devin, Bungified, Brian, Brody, Victor, Chris, Grant, Trevor, and David. Thank you, my dudes.